Hello, my name is Emmanuelle and I'm Alice & Co Designs. Are you wondering what special powers designers have to be able to create such beautiful quilts? Well, let me tell you that you too can have those special powers. I have the secret ingredients that make those special powers and I'm going to share them with you. In no time, you will be creating quilts with your own powers. Designing a Quilt 101 is what I've created. So let me tell you about the Module 1, which is about shapes. Let's start with the basics. Let's have a look at what a grid is. So a grid is going to be just a piece of paper that has lines and turns out that there are horizontal squares and vertical squares. You can, of course, count them. And usually we use a square grid, meaning that there are the same amount of squares horizontally and vertically. So let's have a look at some blocks. We have these blocks and we want to determine what kind of block these are. So what patch grid is this block, for example? Well, let's have a look at it. So the white triangle with the purple triangle make a square. So we're going to trace a line along the triangle that separates the motifs into two. Anything that is done vertically will also be done horizontally. So here, if we count that there are 2 columns, there will also be 2 rows. In other words, this is going to be considered as a 2-patch grid. What about this grid? Well, this one, we're not gonna go with that big triangle and say that it's a 1-patch grid. We are gonna go with the smaller parts. So let's start along the white triangle and then trace a line along the square. We're gonna count this and it turns out that there are 3 columns. So we can consider this pattern as being a 3-patch grid. And anything done vertically can also be done horizontally. Moving on to the next one. So here we're going to start tracing a line along the middle. Then we're going to break down each side by tracing a line along the pink square. We're going to count how many columns we have. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And therefore, same thing horizontally. So this is a 4-patch grid. But what about this? Would this be considered to be a 4-patch grid? Well, when we look at it, we might think that it's a 3-patch grid, but it's actually a 4-patch grid. We're going to start tracing a line along the left rectangle and then one along the right rectangle. But what we need to notice is that when we're dividing a pattern, we always make the columns the same size. So here, the middle part needs to be divided into 2. So we're going to count how many columns we have, and we have 4. So this is a 4-patch grid. So let's compare it. This is a 4-patch grid, but what if we wanted it to be a 3-patch grid? Well, then in that case, it would look like this. So moving on to the next pattern. On this motif, we're going to start tracing a line along the top squares, one on the right and the other on the left. And then we're going to trace a line on each side of the middle square. We're going to count. And we have 5 columns. So therefore, this is a 5-patch grid. Let's move on to the next one. So on this motif, start by the edges and trace along the white squares. then along the white triangles, and then we're going to trace a line in the middle. We're going to count. And there are 6 columns. So therefore, this is a 6-patch grid. So that's the first module of the Designing a Quilt 101, which is available on AllisonCodesigns.mykajabi.com. Within the lessons, you will also be discovering sheets with exercises. So here we have 36 blocks that you can go through and make sure that you know when you see a block that you recognize what type of patch grid it is. There are also pages that you can draw on and create your own blocks. There is a bonus, which is a blank spreadsheet, which have either 3-patch grid, 4-patch grid, 5 or 6 for you to use and design your own blocks. And there's another bonus, which is the shapes that can be cut out in order to make your own patterns more visual by having these shapes. There are several pages. So hopefully you are interested by the Designing Quilt 101, and I'll see you next time. Bye.